I have my voice back and I almost have my energy back, but I don't know, I was on adrenaline because I showed up there in the dark and I left in the dark. Because it's the value of the work that you do for our children and our youth. And when we invest in sports, it's a culture that enriches people's lives. It enriches education. We've seen one of our youth from Kelowna who is the NCAA in the States. And so, that inspired our youth to have that. But we could not have done this if got the staff you have Brooke and Ricky Bartlett. Amazing. Like those two carry this school district at the highest level that they could ever take. Remarkable, standing. We all rolled up their sleeves, worked tirelessly, and sometimes they have their children with them. And it's really is the inspiration. But the children we bring, the vision that we bring, that benefits social. This will inspire our children to not just match with their education, but the sports brings the creativity and the belonging and just gratitude and inspiring within. And that's what I saw in the junior all native. Richie Jones right. People they have never seen Jen the way that this display here. It was phenomenal. And that was the true partnership to school district. Opening the doors and we did from Cedar, Barsby, Engie, Wellington, Silver Bay, and opening the doors and embracing the people and to come and so much fun. With our youth and get the trophies ready and just everybody had a little part and then the icing on the cake was Scott and Auntie Joan when he came and there was not a seat to be had and I was like, good grief, they have to have a seat. And so, you know what, but that is the true dedication, inspiring leadership qualities in the end that's going to benefit and we can only gain educational experience for our children for years to come. It's left a legacy. It's left a welcoming feeling. Families of children in our schools, and we all know. Look at the sun. Is setting, so it's beautiful. So with that, we want to do this to. And
It's okay, I have a spot.
yeah, definitely. Yes, so on behalf of Shanima and the Junior Oneida Tournament, which we were so proud to host, we give the most humblest thank you, HGA, to you and to the rest of your team here, also to your leadership here, and our leadership, which always sees the students greatly inspire us and to that you want the most wellness possibilities. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I mean, every minute that you do. Thank you.
It was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I was not prepared to give a speech today, but I feel like so much words of thanks.
Having my kids.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like it's, you hate to like, I kind of like that. When you go into
I
the
just would like to say maybe a few words, to thank everyone who made Jan possible. And far beyond that, you know, when we talk about our SIETSAS policy framework and walking together, this is another example of the good things that we've been able to accomplish when we take this different worldview. And I think it's, you know, really exciting for our future and what not only this work has resulted in for our students and also bringing us even closer together, but also what we will be able to accomplish in the future. We're on a good path here in the district and just really proud of what we've been able to accomplish and the really strong relationship with our SIETSAS family. It's really important to our district. So on behalf of the Board of Education, thank you. It means a lot, and we'll find a really good home for this, and it will watch over us every day when we're in our meetings. Thank you. Allow me to stay and
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Where's Rick? We do have some business to do. Unfortunately, it's hard to follow such a nice offering. But we'll have to move on with the business of our meeting this evening. So
One quick thing about Jan. Okay,
we may as well.
Chantal and I were on the ferry the next morning and so many families were going up to their homes, and we talked to two families from Kitimat, and there was a boy so sweet, Sebastian. Oh my god, I just love him. And he talked about how he went to Burger King and he get a crown, and I was like, oh, well, tell me your address so I'm gonna mail him. And he was so happy, and it was just, they had just floated for the rest of our trip, everything about
Was.
Fantastic.
All the
Happy
families that we saw and talked to afterwards, they were
everyone
It
was
was
just
a great experience and
adrenaline, like you said, we just don't care.
So we don't have any items to transfer to open meeting. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Leanne, seconded by Tanya. Any discussion? All in favor? Can I see some hands, please? Sorry, all in favor? Carried.
We're here.
Moving on to approval of the minutes, that the minutes from the regular Board of Education meeting held on February 22nd, 2023 be adopted. Do I have a mover? Mark? Leanna? Comments or amendments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to the section 72.3 report. The section 72.3 report on the closed Board of Education meeting on February 22nd, 2023, and the special closed Board of Education meeting on March 22nd, 2023 be received. Can I get a mover? Charlene, seconded by Leanne. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 9, announcements and reminders. We have our education committee meeting scheduled for April the 5th to 2023. Our business committee meeting on April 12th, 2023. That's followed by a Board of Education on April 26th, 2023. We also have the statutory holidays, April 7th, Good Friday, April 10th, Easter Monday, and school is closed. Moving on, we don't have any presentations or correspondence this evening, so we'll move to item 12.1 under committee reports. 12.1.1 privacy. I'm sorry, Tanya, should have went to you for your business committee. I'm taking your job there. I'm sorry.
That's okay, thank you. All right, so 12.1 privacy management program that the Board of Education of School District number 68, and I'm a Ladysmith, received the draft policy privacy and circulates a notice of motion for 30 days utilizing the consultation process as per board governance section 1, 2.7 policy development.
Do we have a seconder? Yeah, Leanne, is that your hand? Okay, thank you. Tanya, would you like to motivate the motion?
Thank you, Chair. There's not too much to say, but I think that it is important that we have a strong policy around privacy. And I think that we all know that we have a good public consultation process, and it's important that we make sure that we're continuing to get community and stakeholder input. So I think the policy's a good place. We should be taking that next step.
Thank you, Tanya. Has any discussion, questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to 12.1.2, Cedar Childcare. Tanya.
Thank you. That the Board of Education of School District number 68, and I'm Lady Smith, direct staff to apply through the Child Care BC New Spaces Fund to add a child care space at Cedar Elementary to accommodate future child care space needs.
Thank you, Tanya. Do you have a seconder? Charlene. Thank you. Would you like to motivate the motion, Tanya?
Yes, thank you. Childcare is a huge, huge issue throughout our community, and anytime we can provide a space that is really collected directly to a school, it provides a lot of support to our families who need them. This is a great opportunity for us to do this, and I think we need to jump on it.
Thank you. Any comments? Go ahead. Sorry, Chantel.
no, it's okay. You were asking questions, so I'm raising my hand to discuss this just a tiny bit further. Just something I learned about this weekend regarding childcare. Oh, sorry, I don't have my microphone on. This is something I kind of learned a little bit more this weekend about childcare spaces, and we had asked the folks at $10 a day childcare about inclusive childcare spaces and how they're funded. And one thing is to advocate for at least, and I would say like 50%, but the person said at least 10% of your childcare spaces be funded at double what they would normally be cost at, so that those spaces could be funded enough to have the support that they need within the childcare space. So that's something that I don't know how it works, in our world when we go to ask for the Childcare BC New Spaces Fund. But I'm wondering if that's something that we can maybe put somewhere added or not added. If you could clarify that, Mark.
Mark, is that something you could respond to?
Partially, yes, Chair. So the Spaces Fund is really completely separate than the actual funding for the services. So the childcares have to be built to be accessible, have to. So every build that we're doing with our own staff is accessible. At this time, we have done a request for interest and qualification for providers to provide the services. And then we lay out the things that are important, connecting with us with early years as much as possible, reconciliation. I don't recall what our REIQ had about accessibility. So really it's on the providers at this time. However, we are coming up to a new REIQ because we want to make sure that everyone in the community has an opportunity, because we're really at 2 providers now. There was 3 proponents, 3 successful proponents originally out of 3 applicants. Only 2 are proceeding with providing the services, but we had heard some concerns that it wasn't really widely known that we were doing this. And so we're going to go back to an REIQ within the next 6 months or so to get additional providers, perhaps, if there's interested parties. And that accessibility will be something that would be part of the REIQ, but I can't speak to, we don't require it at this time. There must be X number of spaces. The other part, of course, is that there will be a child care policy started soon. We have an AP in place just to make sure that we're guiding the work that's happening in the schools, but that's something that I think maybe the policy committee can take into account as the policy gets drafted.
I just wanted to clarify though that accessibility to me is more physical accessibility. I was talking more about just the inclusive space, but you did answer both properly and have clarified how that works, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I would like to thank trustee Tanya Brezovic for this motion. The kind words that she expressed of how important childcare is, as a single parent, I fully appreciate that. It's great, any opportunity that we have to apply the Childcare BC New Space Fund for more spaces in our schools for childcare is a step in the right direction. There's never enough opportunity for us to expand childcare in our schools, and I hope that in the future all schools throughout the district will have childcare spaces, and I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. We don't have any report from our education committee this evening, so we will move on to senior staff reports under item 13.1, the local school calendar. Deputy Superintendent Tate.
Good evening. The district's able to present to you today the draft 3-year local school calendar for the school years of 23-24, 24-25, and 25-26. And the local school calendar, of course, went out for a 3-day consultation. And we received some feedback. It went out broadly. We received roughly about 39 email responses with some feedback, and I've included a few high-level themes. And by that, I've included the themes that had numerous sort of repeats. And they came under some areas, theme areas. The first is truth and reconciliation. At the time that the calendar first went out, we hadn't heard from the provincial government yet as to whether or not they were going to allocate Truth and Reconciliation Day as a provincial holiday. And so that since this time, it has been allocated, and that has been deemed something that's going to be a day of recognition across the province. So that is now been updated and included in the calendar. And so a number of their email responses were inquiring about just that. Next theme is we heard around the timing of the professional development days with statutory holidays. Some people liked them when they were closely connected, and others didn't. So feedback around the December and spring break timing, feedback around the length of spring break, and overarchingly, people agreed with the proposed calendar. And then there were a few sort of one-offs that, but generally those were the overarching themes. And so since that as well, the district and the NDTA were able to reach an agreement around the 2-week spring break. And so that's really positive. And so we have for you the proposed 3-year calendar. And you'll also see in your action sheet in your agenda, proposed motion for your consideration.
Mistake. Are there any questions? Okay.
Great. So I thank you for this. Setting up a calendar for the next 3 years is incredibly difficult. So my hat's off to every single person who worked on that. It's mind-boggling. I don't know if I can even do my next month, let alone the next 3 years. So, but the question I have is about all the feedback that we received. Has that in any way, changed your minds? I mean, obviously we're presenting it as it is, but like, I see like quite a few that said the December break, like for the next year, it was very close to Christmas itself. Not quite sure really what my question is, but if we were to kind of say, this is a what if sort of thing, right? What if, one of us decides to do a motion and say, I'd like to change that Christmas break or something, right? Would that have to go back out to consultation for the next 30 days, or would that be something that, yes, you're not.
I'll let Charlotte work.
As I go to the School Act here. So my understanding is that the board has the ability to make a change without necessarily the same period of consultation requirement. As long as it's gone out to consultation and then the change is as a result of the consultation. So I think statutorily you would be fine. I'm not sure I would recommend it, given there's been a calendar committee, there's been, consultation with our partners, et cetera. So kind of I would, if the board was going to make a change, I'm not sure we have much time to make the change. I can't remember what the last day is, but I would recommend that, well, you might not have to. If you were, I would recommend some consultation with respect to a change if that was to occur.
And more directly to your question, for this one in particular, there were no changes as a result of the feedback. The feedback was anticipated, and it's very similar because the calendar's finite. There's, it's addressing a certain number of issues and dates, and the feedback generally corresponds to those same topics each year, or each 3 years. And generally, the feedback is split. So you'll have some on the same issue or topic, or some that agree, some that don't.
Just further the reference, if you're interested, it's the Section 5 of the School Act, school calendar regulation, says that if there's been the consultation and you make a change, it doesn't require the same consultation again.
If I could have a
You wanna
follow-up.
follow?
I guess my I don't know, my question is more like what in the past, what has been something that has like triggered a change in the school calendar? I'm sorry, I'm kind of slowly getting off, but like especially the December one, like a lot of people seem to come forward with that concern about that one. So I'm just trying to know when, that would trigger a change sort of thing, right? Like,
I can't think historically.
Yeah.
I can't give any examples. However, I would say that generally this process occurs, as you know, when we started this a number of months ago. And so the calendar committee would reconvene, we would review. The timelines on this one have been a little bit different. I also want to say that in total, I believe we received approximately 39 emails. In contrast to the thousands of people that it went out to. So although, we're looking at, say, 9 people commented on the December and spring break timing. Maybe 3 of them didn't express in the email that they didn't like the timing or that it was close to Christmas. So we need to think about, 9 at the most, maybe about 3 out of the thousands that did respond. So I just want to make sure that we, share that context.
thank you. Thank you for that.
Tom?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Assistant Superintendent Pate. Thank you for all this work of the calendar committee, and thank you for clearing my calendar for the next couple of months of committee obligations. I'm wondering, in the calendar committee, we had some good conversations about trying to align our holidays with neighboring districts in order to facilitate a better quality of life for our staff. How are we doing with that?
So so we sort of came out, it's the first time we were in alignment with the Cowichan School District. And at that time, the Hartsville Waltham School District had not put their calendar out publicly yet, so we didn't know at that time. And since that time, I'm not sure if we're aligned with Hartsville Waltham, but we are with Cowichan.
Okay, well, I really appreciate the efforts in this direction. I think we all know that we share a lot of families that live on the border. And the Noose and Ladysmith is a very popular place for our staff to live. So, whatever we can do to keep that moving in the right direction, I really appreciate it.
I agree. Thank you.
Like a follow-up, Tom?
No, thank you.
Charlene, then Mark.
Thanks. I just had a comment. A lot of times when we get feedback from the public, they're not privy to our contractual obligations on when the school year starts. And so that's always a tricky one too, because contractually we have to start on a certain day, and that kind of determines where our Christmas break ends up. So that's always a good reminder to share this evening. But I'm prepared to make the motion if the chair would like me to.
Okay, could we go to Mark and I'll come back to you? Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, acknowledge the hard work that staff has done, the calendar committee. I have a question regarding the makeup of the calendar committee. Is it safe to say that the bulk of the work was done prior to us being elected, and then we finished it up afterwards.
You know the answer to that?
Yeah, I was myself and trustee Higginson previously that sat on the calendar committee, and we started late fall last year. So we did a lot of the work and put the calendar out to the consultation before, or I feel like it was before we got elected. It might have been one of the first motions this board approved was to send it out to consultation. But all the work was done before that, and then the new calendar committee got to take all of that feedback and have a good look at it.
Right.
Just to clarify, I know that our Leanna and mine's first and only calendar committee was seeing the first version presented to us.
Yeah.
So that's where it was when we joined up, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, trustee McKay. Just a quick follow-up. So, going on that, I guess, everything's in sort of rest for the next 3 years, and then the calendar committee now will start working for the 7, 8, 9 years. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Just for clarification for ourselves and the public. Thanks.
I'll come back to you, sir. If you'd like to make a motion.
Sure, and I totally forgot to turn my microphone on before, sorry. Knew that was gonna happen. That the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, approved the attached 3-year local school calendars for 2023, 24, 2024, 25, and 2025, 26.
Seconded by Leanne. Discussion? Sorry,
Alright.
go back to you.
Thanks. I just want to speak to the quality of the discussions that we had when the calendar committee first started with the last board. We actually didn't look at dates or anything like that until we talked about having shared values with the partner groups that were all involved in that committee. And that was really helpful to help us try to look at the calendar as something other than arbitrary numbers and, you know, look at what is the best options for us to try to draw people together, working together to utilize professional development time in the best, most effective way possible. And those conversations were really fruitful, and they might not have changed things necessarily, but they changed the way that we viewed the calendar and how we would come together working on it. And then just the feedback that came back in was super helpful as well. So I just want to thank those trustees that have come in sort of after where we started, because we started with something really different this time, and I've served on this committee for almost 10 years in some capacity or another. So this time was different, and I think it was really positive and holistic. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just say a few words in support as well. And just wanted to thank the work of the calendar committee and our stakeholder groups who were involved. And I'm, you know, pleased at the end of the day, we were able to overcome a very difficult issue related to spring break. And so I thank everyone involved with that as well. And I will be voting in favor of the motion. So thank you. Tanya, did I see your hand?
You did.
Okay.
I just actually wanted to just echo my thanks to all involved in the discussions to get the spring break issue sorted out. That was a very intense and difficult time, that period where we thought that we might be going back to the 1-week spring break. I know that it's a controversial topic on both sides. I know that for some families it is a struggle to have the 2-week. Overall, though, I think that there are things that I would rather do to advocate to support those families than to try to take away the 2-week, which I know gives a lot of a needed rest for a lot of our staff. And so I think we should keep both those issues in mind. I don't think we should lose sight of the concerns of our struggling families and our struggling students for whom school and our staff this is a safe place, and that we make sure that we continue to provide programming like community school programs with our community connections to support those kids during those times. And I'll stop talking now. It's just a passion of mine that
Thanks for sharing, Tanya.
yeah.
Okay, anyone else who'd like to say something on the motion? Sorry, Mark?
Thank you, Chair. Just real quick, I think it would be behoove us to thank all the submissions from the public. It was quite a read to go through all the submissions and the emails. It was a little heartbreaking at sometimes when on the one hand, one parent will say, could you please make it a 4-day weekend and align them so we have an extra time to visit family? But then you get another email saying, could you not do that? Because, daycare is hard to find and it's heartbreaking to make those decisions. So from a logistical aspect point of view, looking at what the calendar committee had to face with staff and parents and the community, my hat's off to the calendar committee, both past and present. So I support the motion based on all the work that's been put in. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 13.2, the thought exchange budget survey results with Mr. Burgos, our Executive Director of Communications, Privacy and Engagement.
Thank you, through the chair. Perhaps I'll just take a few minutes and give you just a quick high level. All the information is in the agenda. However, for those watching at home, it would be nice if maybe we just touch base on a few of these. We had on February 21st began the 2020 consultation process, and that closed on Friday, March the 10th. And through that, we received feedback through Thought Exchange was the big part of it. We also received feedback through email as well. We typically receive most feedback through Thought Exchange. And so I'll go through that right now. In terms of who participated, we had 199 participants take part in the Thought Exchange. They had essentially left 166 thoughts. And of those 166 thoughts, we had just over 5,000 ratings of those thoughts. And through that, let's see here, my glasses, of course, really tiny writing, looks like 31%, if I'm not mistaken, were employees of the district that responded. 57%, which is the largest group, parents or guardians of students in the district. Then the numbers went small from there. 4% for students, 1% for a member of a partner group, 5% for a member of the general community, and 2% for others. In terms of just some of the top general thoughts, the overall top thoughts, I'll give you the top two for each one. From the overall top thought, which is the first link in the information sheet, stop creating new positions at the board office. Every year, more positions are created at the board office. So what we need is more support in schools, or cushy board office positions. The second top thought left, schools need more full-time support staff, EAs assigned to each class for additional supports, a counselor in each school, not only 2 or 3 days. And the next one here, so the second link would be district employee top thoughts, fewer senior administration positions, and the next thought was food for children. Okay, so those were from our staff. From the families, top thoughts, schools need more full-time support staff. Again, this is what I mentioned earlier, EAs assigned to each class for additional support. The second most I thought was social and emotional needs of students. We need more support. That's where the families were at. From our students, it was nice to see that we had more students partake in a thought exchange. Oftentimes we have a budget, a thought exchange, we put it out there, we don't hear much from students. And so we've got a good number from students this time around. We also took some time to our student voice meetings as well. We heard from our students here in this very room understanding. So that was also a great opportunity. The top two thoughts from students were professional development for teachers. And second, we need to increase classrooms and secure teachers. And that very much aligned with what we were hearing through our student voice sessions. For the last link, which is the general community top thoughts, fully funded breakfast programs. And second, providing schools with adequate physical people in the buildings to ensure proper supports are given to students. Those were the top two. Now, feel free again to go through all these links and look at all the top thoughts. However, I just wanted to give you a quick highlight of what we had seen through this thought exchange for the 2023-24 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Burgos. Thanks for the information. Do we have any questions, Mark?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Dale. Thank you so much. I think a lot of people don't see the work that Dale's put in, not just moderating meetings in Gabriel and having to deal with some difficult situations, but in the background. Thank you so much for your work. Question about, was it correct, 199 participants? Was that the number that you?
Yes, 199.
I have a question.
Okay.
I read over 450 submissions. I was going through them. Is it possible people made multiple submissions? Because I read over 450 and I spent a whole day doing it.
Right. With this one, if I may ask just a quick clarification question, 400 submissions, are you talking about the thoughts that were left?
The thought exchange.
Through the thought exchange, okay, yes. Wasn't sure, there were 166 thoughts in this particular one. And so oftentimes we'll see a lot more participants just come and rate. For example, and I'm talking just in general in terms of that, they would come learners, right, and just want to see what's being discussed. There's often that time. So when I look at this number, 199 participants, and of those 166 thoughts, it looked like a lot of them just partook and just rated those thoughts. If that's what you're asking. When I see the 400 though, I'm wondering if you're thinking of a different exchange. So I should have asked that first.
Yeah, in the thought exchange, I went through them all, and it was the part of when you're rating them, and it says and I didn't rate them because I'm a trustee, it didn't make sense. But I went through over 450 of them, and they're all individual, they were all different.
Yes, okay. If I may, and I'm seeing a few people just looking at the papers, and again, respectfully, I'm wondering if maybe you were looking at perhaps the NDSS consultation report, which is also what we're reporting on this evening, because that one has 761 thoughts. And so the thoughts left for the budget are considerably lower than the number that you're.
This is for the calendar.
No, sorry, not for calendar. We're talking budget.
Yeah, Trustee Robinson, we're actually on item 13.2, which is the thought exchange for the budget.
On page 66.
63.
Okay, so that explains exactly what's going on. I'm on the wrong thought exchange.
Want to exchange your thoughts?
So,
Thank you, Dan.
Yep, no problem.
so I have a question, and it may not be for Dale, but figure out who can potentially answer this. So we got all this great feedback. How do we intend to use it to inform the budget process?
So through you, Chair. So as we've talked about the budget a number of times, we still, despite the feedback that we get from individuals, we still focus on the strategic plan. So certainly that's still the focus. And a lot of these comments are going to be things that we also kind of keep in mind over multiple years. So good example is last year, you'll hear the desire to have less senior administration. Last year, we removed a member of senior administration upon retirement and did not replace that position, as an example. Not directly in response, but we thought we could do the same with less folks. So they can influence that. I think as well as what Dale was talking about with respect to the student feedback, you will see that often reflected in the plans that Learning Services comes up with, particularly at secondary, because we hear a lot more secondary students, as well as in our annual facilities grant and the priorities that we come to you with surplus. I don't foresee us coming to the board and saying, the second top thought was EAs for everyone, and here's what we're going to focus on, because either the resources are not there, or theoretically it does not necessarily align with the strategic plan or how we're going to meet our goals. So there's a bit of a mixture, but it does inform those plans. In reality, we're going to be coming Friday after next, whenever the business committee is, with the kind of preliminary budget. And we're still starting the process by looking at status quo, as in we're focusing on a lot of great things and hoping we can get there without looking at cutting positions. We look like we're probably going to be able to get there despite very small increase in enrollment. We're just finalizing the documents to come next week. So Then I think it's really up to the board to influence either the budget decisions they want to make, or more likely to continue to inform the changes to the strategic plan. Because if they're, or to be questioning, learning services when it comes to say, and here's how we're achieving the operational plan according to your strategic plan. And then all of a sudden, if it's not aligned with what we hear are priorities in the system and of the board, well, then maybe that's a further conversation. So ultimately, people won't see a kind of direct reaction to their feedback in the initial budget.
Thank you. Tom?
Okay, thanks a lot, Dale, for bringing the results of this survey into us. I really appreciate the feedback. I wanted to get some clarity on a couple of the student comments that you mentioned. First of all, I wasn't sure if I heard you say they mentioned securing more teachers, or was it more security for teachers? Are we talking about retention and staffing in terms of failures to fill, or are we talking about the working conditions of staff? Wasn't sure what they meant by secure.
Okay, definitely not security. I'll read it over again, and there's also another piece that I did. We need to increase classrooms and secure teachers. Too many students and too few teachers reduce the quality of students' education.
Okay, thank you very much. And then they also made a reference to professional development, and the students did, didn't they?
They did. That was the top thought for students.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if we're asking staff to do things and we're not quite getting our feet under them. So thanks for that great feedback. I think the people in the actual classroom, and 4% of just under 200, 7 or 8 of them took the time to talk to us. I really appreciate it, and I just wonder if it isn't the kind of thing that when we were talking earlier about trying to start with our students to understand the very governance that they live in every day, this seems like a really easy way for a teacher to engage a classroom and a thought exchange. So,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
All staff can, teachers, if they wanted to try thought exchange in their class, we have access to that. So all staff in the district can use it. We have a license to allow.
Right. I guess I was thinking specifically participating in our thought exchanges, let alone kind of using the platform for their own interests. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dale.
Thanks, Dale. Don't see any other questions or hands up.
Just one more piece.
Sure.
We are not quite done the consultation process for the budget. We do have a public session happening tomorrow. 5 o'clock on Teams. So that is virtual if anyone wants to take part of listening at home.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item 13.3, NDSS report, Secretary Treasurer Walsh.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. So this evening is a little bit of an anti-climax, I guess we would suggest for people that are watching at home. So tonight we're just here to present the results of our consultation process with respect to the NDSS capacity and safety consultation, as well as there's a recommended motion with the next steps to contemplate to proceed. Mr. Burgos is here to help go over to what we heard. I think trustees are very in tune and were present at much of what we saw. I think I want to highlight a couple of themes, maybe before turning it over to Dale to come back to me with a little bit more, is that I want to just acknowledge a couple of points. One, just the respectful passion that we saw this community show about the issue. So, there was emotion, and I want to acknowledge that some of the recommendations certainly had impacts on people. But I also want to acknowledge that the kind of constructive nature of every single event that I had the honor of attending, the students and their feedback, the parents and the work that they did to try to provide us information which we might not have had, and the feedback that we heard. So I think that's just really, really important. And I was personally, at the guy answering some of the tough questions, but never ever did the community not respond in a kind of positive way that I think led this discussion in a great way to help the board make a better decision. So I'm gonna maybe turn it over to Dale to talk about, again, some of the things we heard, and I don't think anything's gonna surprise you. And then talk about what we're hoping the next steps are if the board supports the recommendation.
Thank you, Mark, and through the chair. The consultation process for the NDSS ensuring capacity and safety projects began January 26th, and we had that open until the end of February. So February 28th was the closing date. I have to say that before I get started and start talking about our numbers here, this received one of the highest numbers that we've had in most recent time in terms of the thought exchange, and also through email, through all the channels that we had open for this consultation. And so to give you some highlights, again, these links are in the information sheet, however, I'll give it to you right now. In the thought exchange, 960 participants took part, 761 thoughts were left, and this number is quite high, 29,298 ratings. So those 960 participants that spent the time, went through this whole consultation, they really took it to heart, and they wanted to share their ratings, and whether it's a 1-star or a 5-star, it looked like there were a number of people that really took part. I have to also share Thought Exchange. I often talk with them, our account representative. They say that our district typically gets very big numbers in terms of people participating, and so that's good news. So our community is they're not tired of being consulted with. In fact, I think that they really do appreciate hearing, or rather giving the opportunity to share their thoughts and feedback with us. And so that's really, really good news to hear. And Thought Exchange has customers all across North America, probably internationally as well. So in fact, they like us so much. I'm sitting on advisory for North America. They wonder how we actually get so much activity on our Thought Exchanges. So it's good on us. 66% of those participated were parents or caregivers. 14% were employees of the district. Another 14% of those were students. So a really good number, 122 students out of that large number that we had. Smaller numbers in terms of local partners, a member of the general community, and other. The other question that we did ask in this one, does your child attend one of the schools listed in the introduction? We like to have these qualifier questions. We like to see who's really participating, and if they do have some tie directly to the district. And so 74% of those that participated said yes to the question. Now, in terms of the top thoughts, this is the top couple overall thoughts. And no surprise, we did hear this through emails as well. Gabriel kids need to stay at NDSS. Do not take away their academic and extracurricular opportunities because of board mistakes over the past decade. That was the first one. The second one is move Chase River students presumably to Cedar Second. As parents participating in the top 2 thoughts there, move Chase River to Cedar Secondary, so you can see that there was that tie into the overall top thought. And the second one, moving Gabriel Island kids to Cedar High, will ultimately end up costing families financial. From our students, top thoughts. Scenario 1, moving Gabriel kids is detrimental. Extracurricular activities are staying a few minutes after school is very upsetting for community. Again, that's what we heard also in person as well, and through email. The second, Gabriel kids need to stay at NDSS. Do not take away their academic and extracurricular opportunities. Again, because of board mistakes in the past decade. So we saw that as the top thought. The group, the employee data, or this is employee data, the top 2 thoughts here, move Chase River and North Oyster catchments to Cedar to fill it up. And then said Gabriola kids to Barsby, so they have access to public transportation. The second, moving the Lacrosse Academy to John Barsby makes sense. Again, that was from our employees. And the last group is the general community and capacity concerns. A little bit more, I think I should share with you. NDSS's attraction is the different academies offered. This can be offered at other schools as well. Second, children currently attending NDSS should not be moved, or should move in portables. Only implement changes effective for new grade 8s in the fall of 23. Okay, so there's those pieces. I also wanted to share, on top of the thought exchange, again, thanking people for taking the time to send us emails. Those are our appendices, and we don't have access to that. I don't believe it's in the script right now, but we can get it you. In terms of just the overall emails, it looks like we had 57 emails, and that will be Appendix A, and those were all email feedback. We have Appendix B, which is Andy says capacity email feedback overview. Those were emails. In person, we had gone over to Gabriel Elementary and spent some time with people there. There was, I would say, 100 or so people, maybe more, in attendance, and it was nice to see people coming up and speaking on behalf of their community. And then we also had our virtual open house, which took place on February 21st of last month.
Yeah.
So as a result of many of the things we heard and some of the questions that were arose as well, you will see the recommended motion is associated with going to gather some more information. So I want to represent, I hope I'm going to represent what I think the majority of our Gabriola friends indicated, and that's that they are not interested in the Cedar option. The Lacrosse Academy is not interested in the Barsby option. Soccer wasn't quite as maybe vocal, but we get the sense that they are also not interested, and we've added some of the material provided by those academies as well. There was an openness, I believe, in the community to the concept of asking students to go back to their home schools in the event that they did leave their programs of choice. And then there was, there's a lot of discussion amongst the groups about let's just have more portables so kids can get in, and then try to get the government to build a bigger school. So that now, here's a maybe we learned something moment. We really tried to focus and limit the impact on people to groups that we thought would make the number difference without throwing everything into the hopper and kind of needlessly creating unnecessary, the angst that we heard from the groups that potentially would be impacted, which to also a certain extent limited who we heard from. And so I'm not sure that the board has all the information that it needs. I'm not sure we heard everything that we needed to hear in order to go to the next step. So we went in as staff with the kind of understanding from knowing the staff there and knowing the situation at ND that the capacity is a problem that we need to address. And I think that I think that I probably needed to do more work in making that case and getting the voices of staff first off, because I'm not sure that everyone, particularly that are impacted, agree that that's an issue, and there's some education to be done and some understanding to be done. And so I like the opportunity to do that. ND is doing well, but it is also peaking, it's also still hitting higher, and then next year higher, and then next year higher, and next year higher. So the stresses of 1636 and 1650 and 1680 are going to be significantly different than the last few years, which people might have experienced, which saw a rapid growth of a couple hundred kids in a very short period of time. This process is incredibly important to get right, but it's also a good opportunity for the board to use in its advocacy with respect to the ministry when it comes time to replace and expand. So very, very important to get that right. So what we're suggesting is a number of things. We are suggesting, because we've already said that the Gabriola people have no interest in moving in 2023, that we have a little bit more time on our hands now. And so what we would like is to get that more time, not to close the process tonight, but to get more time. And we want to do the research that's on page 68. I'll go through it if that's okay. So one, we want to understand the impact of doing nothing. So we want to actually target the school as a whole, and including staff and students impacted or potentially not impacted, to understand what's happening, what it feels like to teach and to be a student in a school of 1650, 1670, 1690 in the facility that they have. Because I think that would be helpful. We heard important voices that love ND and would do anything to stay there. But we didn't necessarily hear from the groups that are going to be impacted by no decision. So we do want to do a bit of survey work on that front. We also want to go to schools that are not built, that are in ND's situation basically, and have functioned with portables. So it's not going to be hard to find a Lower Mainland school that's kind of old, that has a whole bunch of portables to get a sense. You know, how do you do home ec? How do you do that? How's it working? What's missing, etc. And to get a sense of what a permanent school of 18 to 1900 kids looks like, because that seems to be the demand of some of the folks we've heard from. We want to hear, like, we want to dig a little bit deeper, and I don't think we need to dig too much deeper, but we heard the value of these programs, and we do want to have a little bit more discussion about what happens if the programs are lost. So soccer, well, there's lots of opportunities in the community still for this, that still have soccer at school, etc. But what happens if lacrosse does go by the wayside, if it moves? So what is the impact? And then I think that it's really important, and we did some very preliminary numbers for the board, but I do think it's important that we come back with, here's what the portable amounts look like, and we've provided that relatively recently, but here's where you're going to find that money. So we're going to take it from X, we're going to take it from Y, we're going to do these things or have to sacrifice these things in order to accommodate all those portables. Or alternatively, we're not, and we're just going to say no to neighborhood kids getting into ND. So I think there's still a solution that's going to be required, but some time is not going to hurt us in this. And so from what we've heard, from the passion of the community, from the desire to stay at ND, we need to make sure that it is what people want. So maybe 1,800 people want a kind of rundown school with 22 portables, maybe, while they await for something bigger or new. So maybe that is what people are looking for. And so we do want a little bit more time to go get that information. And so again, sorry, it's a bit anticlimactic, but the recommendation is that the board direct staff to conduct further consultation, as well as provide additional information with respect to potential NDSS options, and report back to the board with recommendations and next steps for the board to consider.
Thank you, Mark. Excellent report. We have a couple of trustees with questions. I think Tom and Tanya.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Mark and Dale, for a very comprehensive report. I think it really sums up where we are, even if it's not satisfying. I guess I heard something in some of your comments again. Man, I'm liking this thought stream tonight, Dale. You know, you mentioned, Mark, whether we had put enough of our district in the hopper, so to speak, to come up with an answer, and weighing that against the impact it has on families' anxiety around if they're involved in a potential change. But it seems to me like from some of those comments that you read out that the community almost went there. When we're talking about reorganizing NDSS, and they mention an elementary school that doesn't feed NDSS, going to a high school that isn't NDSS, and then mentioning the historical issue that this is, I think our community is actually ahead of us. It's actually ahead of us. I think this is a few tweaks around the edges. I find it very interesting that in an NDSS organization thought stream that the suggestion would be around 2 other schools that aren't conventional. Strike you as reflecting anything? Does anyone else see that? I'm finding it weird that when we're asking NDSS and the answer Chase River to Cedar. So can you say it was a common, it was a very.
Yeah, we heard this, we've received a few emails on that. This was obviously a top comment in the thought exchange. Even folks had, when we went to Gabriel Elementary, that was also one of the top thoughts. The idea behind there, and I don't know if maybe as well, if you'd like to speak on some conversation. this idea of Chase River, or I think we're going to see it, but this is an age-old conversation that's been happening in the district. I'm seeing some of the people that have been here for a while now, so perhaps maybe someone can say, well, you want to maybe jump in?
Well, I think, at least at one point, it was communicated that, taking the Gabriola students from ND and putting them into Cedar serves two purposes, right? If to take some students out of ND and it fills up Cedar, which was also talked about. So I think perhaps, at least in some ways, although this is a problem, an age-old problem with Chase River going to Cedar, I think it was part opportunity, but also part in filling up Cedar, which was mentioned as another challenge in the district. So astute observation, Trustee Rokeby, because it's unrelated to, taking students out of Cedar or out of ND, sorry. Yeah.
Just as a quick follow-up, my observation off of that is that the community may be okay with a larger conversation if it needs to be a larger conversation to get this done right. So that's what I took from that. So thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Tanya?
I was actually going to say that I'd like to move the recommendation, which I do, but I do have a question now. This has brought a question for me. Through the chair, Mr. Walsh, would this motion allow for recommendations from staff around having larger conversations, like around our whole, there's something to be said for a capacity review for a district.
So through you, Chair, so it absolutely it would.
Okay.
So what I would foresee is that the kind of answers to the questions that we've got here are relatively important, right? So if we do go and survey ND, the school, the students, the parents as a whole, as an example of the staff, and we all of a sudden discover, oh, no. There's a huge concern about the situation, and portables is not something that people want. Yes, we understand that we shouldn't, kids that are in the school now shouldn't be asked to leave, but, we've got to stop it somehow. Like if we hear that overwhelmingly, then that's going to encourage the board to now look at the next thing. Where if it's, we can hold out, just apply for a really big school, and then we look at question 2 and question 3, etc. As noted, I think, and it came up a lot in the meetings that we've had, and there's some very astute people out in our community about why aren't you looking at the bigger picture? And one of the things that we've suggested is that the difficulty for us, and Chase suit this conversation, but we will ultimately in 5, 6, 7, 8 years time be looking to move more kids south. And so we don't need to look at the entire district at this point necessarily. We need to look at how we get kids south, because Dover is got an expansion, but it'll be over capacity soon. Wellington is over capacity, and there's nowhere those kids to go because ND is next in line, right? So that will be a discussion when those kids, assuming that our kind of robust build out data for Nanaimo Ladysmith occurs, we will start to have that conversation. I think that a larger conversation is appropriate. I'm not sure the large conversation is something that we would want. So the Chase as an example is probably, if there was room, sure, but we wouldn't talk about, we got questions about, well, can we move Forest Park to Wellington and just look at the entire hopper right now? And of course, the answer is no, we can't move anybody north. Otherwise, our problems are going to get a lot worse very quickly.
Okay, well, whenever you're ready, I'm happy with the recommendation.
And sorry, one other thing, we will be coming with some Rutherford related information that will require some looking, but it will like some reevaluation if Rutherford is to open, but that again will be geographically specific.
Okay.
Yeah, follow up, Tanya?
No, I'm ready.
The motion?
Yes, please. That the Board of Education of School District Number 68, and I'm Ladysmith, directs staff to conduct further consultation as well as provide additional information with respect to potential NDSS options and report back to the board with recommendations and next steps for the board to consider.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Yeah. Go ahead, Tanya. If you'd like
Yes,
to motivate.
please. Yes, please. I am really pleased to see this recommendation. I think it shows a lot of openness from staff. I think it speaks to why we created the LRFP Advisory Committee, and I think it shows how well that is working and a real commitment by the board and by staff to be authentic and responsive in doing meaningful consultation. I think this recommendation strengthens our relationships with the community, with parents, with staff at our various schools. I think this is really good thinking from staff, and I'm really pleased and proud to support this.
Thank you, Tanya. Anyone else? Mark?
Promise I'm on the right page now. Through you, Chair, to trustee, resident, excuse me. Well, I was for everyone, pardon me. Trustee Rokeby mentioned about anxiety, and there are thousands of parents and kids and even us full of anxiety over this process. And I think we have an opportunity tonight to alleviate some of that anxiety and invite those that we relieve of anxiety to come on board and help us with the thought process and thought exchange. Because Dale mentioned, and he's right, we've had so much input and it's been so helpful for me. 450, I went through and found out there's over 700. I thought I was done. We ain't done. And that took me a whole day. So I like to propose that we do something to alleviate the anxiety for the students and the parents and the residents of Gabriola right now tonight. And I propose an amendment based on what our Secretary Treasurer Mark Walsh mentioned, that we hear the community, and it's clear that Gabriola does not want to have their kids go to Cedar for 450 reasons plus. So I propose an amendment that it's read as is, and we add that we remove Gabriola from consideration to go to Cedar, to change to Cedar, to just alleviate that we're all able to tap into the great people of Gabriola and ask for help moving forward on this. Thank you.
Seconder? Seconder? Okay, thank you, Charlie. Okay, did you want to say anything about your amendment before we call a question on the amendment itself?
No, thanks, Chair. I think we're all understanding where it comes from. Thank
So
you.
I just want to make sure that we get this right. So it would read at the end of the motion as written, you would add, and that Gabriola Elementary be removed from consideration to feed into Cedar Secondary.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
You're happy seconding that? Thank you. Just a moment. So we've got seconded on the amendment, discussion on the amendment. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I appreciate this amendment from Trustee Robinson. I think it also seems to reflect what a lot of us read in the newspaper the other day. So I think to be consistent, our motion from the board should reflect what the community is already seeing in the paper. So I'll be voting for the amendment.
Anyone else on the amendment? Tanya?
I also support the amendment. I'll be honest with you, I sort of felt like we'd already kind of made that decision, and so I didn't really think it was an option I thought we'd already ruled out the option, but I think there's value in formalizing it and making sure that it's very clear that that's where we are.
Okay. Okay, I'll call the question on the amendment. So we're voting on whether we want to amend the motion as proposed. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so now we'll go back to the discussion on the amended motion. And Charlene, you're next on my list.
Thank you. So I'm happy to support the amended motion, and I guess I just want to acknowledge the effort that staff have made to be reflective of what we've heard back so far through the consultation process. Being able to come forward with some really specific information, I believe that will help us make better determinations around the 4 things that you're looking to go out and do and come back to the board with, I think is very supportive of our work, and I appreciate that this recommendation has been brought forth for us this evening to help us do our job as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I will also speak in favor of the amended motion and
pretty much everything I was gonna say has already been said, so I'll just keep it short and just say that, I'd also welcome us in working, finding ways, I think, to change the narrative from this being a district problem to this being something that we need to work with the community to resolve. So I'll leave that with staff to try and figure out a way to make that happen in terms of how we get their involvement and feedback and participation. I think it is going to take a community to come up with a solution that makes sense for everybody. So I appreciate the work and I look forward to seeing the next steps. So is there anyone else that'd like to speak to the amended motion? Don't see any hands, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Moving on, there's no unfinished business this evening. There's no new business. For information, we have item 16.1 board motions report and 16.2 trustee committee reports. I'll pause there in case there's any questions on those two items. Kelly.
Thank you. On the board motions report, will it now reflect that the ad hoc committee is completed the next time we get an update on that? I got a nod. So, okay.
Okay, I think Mark's still looking, but you got a nod. Do you need a minute, Mark?
It just says ongoing, so I assumed that it would be marked complete.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Any other questions on those items? Seeing none, I'll move on. Are there any questions this evening, Karen? No questions, thank you. So the last item on the agenda is adjournment. Motion to adjourn, moved by Charlene, seconded by Tanya. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone.
I take this. 3? Oh, thank you. Who brought them in?